Joe and I sat down to write this book because we noticed something a bit weird about consumer culture. Everybody hates consumerism. Everyone's rebelling against mass society. Everybody we know is anti-consumerist. Everybody we know is a rebel. Everyone's going to movies like Michael Moore's movies. We're going to see The Corporation. They're seeing movies like Super Size Me, reading No Logo. Yet somehow we still live in a consumer culture. So what's going on here? What are people exactly opposed to anyway? Well, it seems that what people don't like is conformity. They're opposed to the idea that we live in a society which is one big system of enforced conformity. A good example of this is what we see in Pink Floyd's movie The Wall, right? The idea that the whole system is dedicated towards creating kids in uniforms turning into sausages in the song Another Brick in the Wall Part 2. Everyone rebels, yet nothing ever changes. Our argument is that this is based on a myth. The myth is that the system requires conformity, conformity of belief, conformity of attitudes, conformity of consumption choices, and ultimately conformity of consciousness. As we see it, the system doesn't need this. The system will sell you anything it wants. The system will sell you individuality. The system will sell you rebellion. Ultimately, the system doesn't need to sell you the same thing everyone else is. So ultimately, rebellion, through avant-garde art, styles of shoes, styles of clothing, alternative music, none of this changes anything. For obvious reasons. The system doesn't care. Just go to Starbucks, right? Everybody walks in, they will make it exactly how you want it. You can get your triple shot double latte, you can get your mochaccino, you can get whatever you want. Go anywhere. Everybody is perfectly happy to build you something specifically tailored to your tastes. And if your tastes happen to be rebellion, if your tastes happen to be green hair, if your tastes happen to be avant-garde art, the system is more than happy to sell it to you.
Yeah, so when Andrew and I sat down and looked at this, I mean, what we realized, the mistake people were making is to think that consumerism ultimately is about conformity. And I think, if you think about your own consumption habits, that's just obviously false. I mean, maybe when you're in high school, you wanted to get the same pair of jeans as the cool kids so you could fit in. But frankly, most of us, when we go out and buy things, what we're looking for is something that establishes some kind of distinction, something that sets us apart from other people. We rummage through our basements and through our closets to look at stuff that we bought over the years, that we'd spent maybe a little bit too much money on. And personally, like everything that I've bought, really, that was kind of expensive, I bought it because I thought it was cool. And of course, cool is fundamentally, it's not a bit about conformity, it's about distinction, right? I mean, cool is about the difference between stuff that's cool and other stuff that is uncool. And it's totally crucial. Like for some people to be cool, lots of other people have to suck, right? That's the element of distinction that consumers are really looking for. And really, that's also what explains the dissatisfaction of consumer society. The fact that everybody's so unhappy and everybody complains about consumerism. Why? It's because everybody's essentially looking for distinction, something that says, I'm better than you. And what does that do? That generates competition. The fact is that not everybody can be distinct. Not everybody can be cooler than their neighbors or the kids down the street or what have you. It's like students all wanting to have above average grades. The fact is that somebody has to be average. And in our society, somebody has to be uncool as well, and somebody has to have bad taste. And whoever the losers are in that competition are going to wind up being unhappy. And that's the problem of consumerism. So consumerism, in our view, is not about conformity. It's about distinction, and it's about competitive consumption. Now, of course, that makes you realize why, with all this rebellion going on, the system never changes. Why? Because rebellion is one of the most powerful sources of distinction. Right? I mean, the critique of mass society says that we're all just cogs in the machine, that, we're like sheep going over the hill and this kind of stuff. Well, who would want to be a cog in the machine, right? It makes you seem like an idiot. So what's one of the best ways of showing how great you are, how superior you are to your neighbors? It's by rebelling against the system. And as a result, rebellion has become one of the most powerful forces driving consumer capitalism. Right? So the critique of mass society has become a way of selling goods. And that's something that's been going on since the 1960s. And the fact that 40 years later we're only now starting to realize that this is what's going on is kind of a pathetic reflection of our critical faculties. Right? So anyhow, I mean, the general kind of rebellion that we've been seeing in countercultural movements since the 60s, getting funny haircuts, wearing different color clothes. I mean, we were both into that at a certain stage. But at a certain point you grow up and you kind of realize that that kind of rebellion against taste or against gray flannel suits or ties or whatever, it doesn't change anything, right? It's not really a threat to the system. So in fact, I mean, we think that the Beastie Boys basically called everybody's bluff a long time ago when they said that, basically we're fighting for the right to party, and that's all it comes down to.